What's up, gamers and geeks? Matt here with That's Fair Podcasting and Gaming Geeks Live. Now, for those of you who followed my videos, especially when it comes to video games, my all-time favorite video game ever is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, released by BioWare in 2003. Now, having said that, in my opinion, with this alleged impending remakes and or remasters of Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2, I want to go over why I think that would make the ultimate strategic sense when it comes to the eventual launch of Fate of the Old Republic. So stay tuned. Now, in an industry for us older gamers, when it comes to video games, I noticed that, I don't know about you, but I've talked to a lot of people and I've watched a lot of videos. We find ourselves reaching for the older games, the more familiar games that we've already played, because let's be realistic, the AAA industry is seemingly torching the shit out of most of the new IPs. Now, there were a few really good games, I think, that came out in 2025, but for the most part, the AAA industry just has not been very reliable. That's why we, kind of reach for these, what's familiar to us, the older games, like as well as I do, the Skyrims, the older Fallouts and whatnot, and a lot of the older BioWare games, and there's a reason for that. And that's why I think that these remakes and or remasters of these KOTORs would be clutch for gamers like me. But if you are new here, please feel free to subscribe to That's Fair Podcasting or Gaming Geeks Live. Maybe like the video as you always do. Help me in that algorithm. Thank you so much. And if you don't do any of those and you just watch this video on why I think a remaster of the first two KOTORs is a strategically smart move, thanks for sticking with me. I sincerely appreciate it. It makes sense, I think, narratively as well as for marketing reasons. Let's start with getting back to the old pre-Disney feel of Star Wars. That Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, and to some degree, even though it was rushed, KOTOR 2 did give us. And a lot of those games back in the day with the original Battlefronts and the, well before there was the Jedi Fallen Order, you had, I think Kyle Katarn was in Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy. So you had so many of these video games that came out that gave you that pre-Disney Star Wars feel, which, let's be honest, man, when it comes to Disney now, they don't know how to, really deliver that genuine Star Wars feel. They haven't since 2015, when I think The Force Awakens originally launched. Now, that's just a matter of opinion, mind you. Obviously, Fate of the Old Republic, it's not a direct sequel to Star Wars KOTOR 1 and 2. It's more of a spiritual successor, as it has been described. Now, again, having said that, you have some of these older devs that are going to be working on Fate of the Old Republic, Casey Hudson, who's famous for the Mass Effect trilogy and whatnot. So, you have these people that were pre-Disney working on types of things that I think they know, and they have a feel of what, real gamers and real warsies like us want when it comes to Star Wars, Disney, and pre. Also, a remaster and or remake of the first two, I think ultimately will give, Disney, especially since they kind of have their proverbial hand and everything is all Star Wars, but Disney and, let's say, Lucasfilm's working on, or having their hand in these remakes. Let's start with the original lore. It'll allow, if these come out, it'll allow gamers to get back into the original lore that got you there when it came to the Old Republic. Characters, the same thing, staying loyal to the characters, the background of these characters and whatnot. With the massive story, if they can get back to the original lore, the massive story that these gave you, and the character arcs that were in both of these games, I think that's the right step towards a Fate of the Old Republic launch, hyping it up even more. Now, I'm not saying that Fate of the Old Republic needs hype. Honestly, I don't think it does. I think that us warsies, we're ready. We're ready. If it dropped tomorrow and it was rushed, it wouldn't matter. It would in the long run, because I'm sure we'd bitch at the finished product, but we're ready. And we've been ready for some time, even though eventually there was supposed to be a KOTOR 3, but it got scrapped. So anyway, Having said that, I think, let's get back to the lore of it in these remakes, you know, emphasize the characters again, and then, give you that Star Wars feel when it comes to the main story. So now, obviously, it would make sense to modernize gameplay and graphics. I mean, obviously, that's a given. Of course, it's going to be remakes and remasters, so they're always updated on a much more advanced engine than originally coming out. Because when you jump back into those two, realistically, the engine, the graphics, it's all outdated. I mean, it has that D20 turn-based combat, but it aged kind of poorly as far as the combat with the D20, because you choose your moves. You had your flurry, you had all these different moves as your Jedi and the KOTORs, and you had different combat things to pick up from your feats. And yeah, it was heavily drawn upon 3.0 and 3.5 Dungeons and Dragons D20 system, and it was great for its time. But I think people want more of an immersive experience of their combat, with them being able to control what they're doing with the button mashing, much like Star Wars The Force Unleashed brought us with Galen Merrick, and then coming farther along with The Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor with Cal, allowing you to choose your combat mechanics by combos and buttons, rather than it being the D20 combat system that was, you click on it, it's pre-chosen, and then you watch it. So yeah, I think that these upgrades to the combat system will most likely give us the combat that we get to choose per button mashing, picking combos and whatnot, as opposed to the D20 combat system, which I highly doubt will be in these remakes. Now, let's talk about fixing KOTOR 2's unfinished state. As you know, KOTOR 2, Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords, it was rushed. It was done by Obsidian to push it out, but what Obsidian had done, because it was rushed, is they ended up cutting some of the original content. Now, in this remake and or remaster of KOTOR 2, The Sith Lords, I think that you can see that they were going to be adding the original cut content back in it to give it a more complete and a more polished game, have that less of a rushed feel, because it did feel rushed. When you go back and play KOTOR 2, and it's hard, again, the outdated graphics and the combat mechanics, but when you do go back and play it, it does feel rushed. It doesn't give you the real hard Star Wars feel. Some of it gave me a sci-fi feel, but it was less Star Warsy. And it was rushed again. So the good news about this is, if and when, depending on all the court cases and whatnot being dropped to allow this remake for KOTOR 2, but given the nature of that, I think in the KOTOR 2 remake and remaster, you'll see the finished content that was not allowed to be in the original release back in 2005. Aside from the obvious upgraded gameplay and graphics that we are going to get, you can also get a remastered audio as well. You can expect that with a lot of the remasters that come out. There's not a lot that's changed. You have the same voice actors and whatnot, but it's more of a remastered sound upon release. Because yes, you would definitely be able to tell if you had a remastered graphics and an updated engine, but you had the old audio. You would definitely tell. So expect completely remastered audio as well when given the voice acting and whatnot. And what I kind of would expect is maybe larger selections of your wardrobe. You can probably expect an armor upgrade and more robes, Jedi robes and whatnot. I would expect that kind of upgrade, and I would also expect in this remaster and or remake deeper character customization as well. You're not going to have the same 7 or 8 presets. You'll probably be able to actually customize your actual, from the eyes, more along the lines of a Bethesda would give you, let's say in a Fallout 4 or even a Starfield, minus the pronouns. Why I think these two remakes could escalate the already hyped fate of the Old Republic that we know is coming out. Again, modernized graphics and gameplay. That is a no-brainer. And for KOTOR 1 and 2, it would also, I think, help in bringing a younger generation by bringing these remakes and remasters out. You would definitely draw in a younger generation. Now, there's going to be a younger generation that is young enough that they had to go back and see what the original Star Wars was about, but they probably caught the Disney version of Star Wars first. That young of a generation that is probably going to be front row and center for Fate of the Old Republic. But what I do think is a remake and remaster of the first two KOTORs, but also usher in that generation to get an idea of what the Old Republic was like without kind of being baptized like a baptism by fire in Fate of the Old Republic, as you know, because Fate of the Old Republic story is going to be, supposedly the timeline is going to be close to the end of the Old Republic, from what all the hype has been circulating as far as that impending game. Also with these remasters, let's stay true to the actual stories, both stories. You know, obviously the story of Revan in the first one, and then Mitra Surik. This is all what was canon, but you had Revan that you gave a name to yourself, but you know, Revan. And then you had Mitra Surik that was in canon, a female. But let's stay true to these stories. You know, with Mitra Surik, you know, you go to Malachi or Malachor 5, and you have it out, you fight, I believe, Darth Sion and then Darth Traya. Let's stay true to the story, because I think the story and the lore are very, very important. And let's keep that Disney DEI shit out. There's no need to change up any of the characters. Keep all the characters that they were. Just update them in graphics. But don't have any reason to change all the characters that we, like from the second one with Atten Rand, Mira, the Handmaiden, and Visas Mars. And, obviously in the first one with Mission Vale, Basta Lashan. Let's not Disney that shit out. Let's keep what we know for the older generation and allow the younger generation to get a hold of these games as well. Also, stay true to what happened during the Old Republic. You had your Jedi-Mandalorian War. Canderous Ordo talks much about that, how he learns to respect Revan, and how he saw the Jedi on the battlefield, and how the Mandalorian actually, had met their match for the first time, really. And so let's stay true to what happened with the Jedi-Mandalorian War, and let's release all the DLCs. When I played KOTOR, the first one, I never did delve into, there was, I believe, a Yavin 4 DLC. I never played it, and I'm kind of curious to see how that is. Let's keep all of the DLC. I'm not even sure what DLC there was for the Sith Lords, if there was any. I'm drawing a total blank. Maybe in the comments section you guys can tell me if there was DLC for the Sith Lords. If there was, I didn't know about it and I never purchased it. I did know well after I played and stopped playing KOTOR 1 that there was a DLC, again, a Yavin 4 DLC, but I never purchased it. But what do you guys, tell me in the comments section, would you guys stand for these remakes? Would you guys be excited for these remakes that are long overdue? Again, I think that's why some of us gamers, it's hard to trust a AAA gaming industry anymore with new IPs unless they're new developing companies. I'm having a hard time trusting the Bethesdas, the BioWares, and damn sure the Ubisofts, because it's almost like their IPs, they don't know what to do with their IPs anymore. They've done everything I think they can do. I think they almost need to sell off these IPs, and technically Tencent's going to probably end up getting the Assassin's Creeds, but that's just my opinion. What is it you guys would like to see in these remakes? Would you like them to stay true to the story and just upgrade everything? Would you like to see anything new added? Those are my thoughts. My final thoughts on this are, that's why I think it would be imperative for a KOTOR 1 and 2 remake and or remaster. Fate of the Old Republic is going to sell just fine on its own, but I think if you release these remade before Fate of the Old Republic, I think that would just be the perfect pitch for not only a younger generation, but for us old geezers, that you get back in and get back into that Star Wars feel, that pre-Disney Star Wars feel. But anyway, guys, that's why I think it would be a strategically smart move to release these remasters before Fate. But anyway, that's really all I have. Thank you so much for checking this video out. Please, again, feel free to subscribe to That's Fair Podcasting or Gaming Geeks Live. Again, like that video, and if you didn't do any of those and you just heard why I think the remasters should definitely be dropped for the Fate of the Old Republic's pending launch, thank you so much for sticking with me. And to all you gamers out there, all love, and I'm outro.